everyone, and welcome to my very first video on this YouTube channel on the Art of Alopecia. For those who don't know me, my name is Marcy and I have an autoimmune condition called Alopecia universalis. Basically what it is my immune system is mistakenly attacking my hair follicles to make everything fall out, and that is why I am completely bald and balding throughout my body, which also includes my eyebrows and my eyelashes. And in March of 2020, during the first quarantine of COVID-19, I decided to open up my very first alopecia focused Instagram page, also known as the Art of Alopecia, which you can check out after this video. Basically, in order to raise awareness for alopecia, promote self-love, body positivity, also add in a few wig tutorials, wig reviews, tips and tricks, and all of that fun stuff. And, you know, just to bring some light to what can be a really dark disease. Now, after a few months of running that Instagram page, which I will be continuing to run, I've decided to move it over to YouTube in order to reach a larger audience, in order to continue raising awareness at a larger scale and helping in any way that I can. Now, for my very first video on this YouTube channel, I thought what better way to introduce myself than to tell my entire alopecia story from the moment I got diagnosed to present day. And for those who have been following me on Instagram since the beginning, I did post a similar video where I shared my whole story, but in this one I added a lot more detail and a lot more stories. So if you did watch it previously, then feel free to watch it again and learn more about me. And for those who are new, I promise you this is a really good story that you're going to want to hear. And since I have been dealing with this condition for so long, I would not be able to just share it off the top of my head. So I did type it out that I'm going to be reading to you guys today, and I hope that you guys can get comfortable, maybe lay down, close your eyes. It's going to be a long one, but I promise you it's going to be worth it by the end. Now, I won't make this intro any longer than it needs to be, so I'm going to go ahead and put on my reading glasses, get comfortable, get comfy, and let's start sharing. It all started when I was 5 years old with a small little bald spot at the back of my head. Waking up that morning, I had found hair on my pillow that had fallen out overnight. Unfortunately, one bald spot turned into multiple. We went to my family doctor, who had no idea what it was, which then led to a referral to a dermatologist. After waiting a whole year, I became one of Dr. McNeely's patients, one of the best doctors I've ever had. With the help of multiple tests and blood work, the results and the diagnosis came out to be alopecia areata, an autoimmune condition that prevented me from growing hair on certain areas on my head. My immune system was mistakenly attacking my hair follicles with no found cause. I didn't really understand at the time, so I did what any other 6-year-old would do, kept playing and living my best life. I had long enough hair and was able to cover the spots. These bald spots didn't affect my appearance one bit. Until the age of 10. A little bald spot turned into a giant one at the back of my head. I still had a good amount of hair, but couldn't rely on it to cover that spot. I found the alternative to start sporting beanie hats to cover it at school. I got special permission from my principal to wear them inside, as it was a rule. Some of the kids in my class and others didn't think it was quite fair that I got special treatment to wear a hat when it was against the rules. I kept my cool and tried to stay positive. Only my closest friends knew about my disease, but the majority didn't. Another issue that came into play was competitive soccer. I loved the sport and had been playing it since I was 4. No way could I let my alopecia ruin it for me. I had to think of another alternative to cover my spots without the beanie. So I started wearing a skin-tight sports cap with a ponytail hole. That's when I realized how people, both parents and their kids, could be so cruel. Every game I had to show medical documentation in order to play the game with my cap, as for some reason this counted as a hat, and this wasn't allowed during the game. My teammates were all supportive when I told them what I had, but the kids on the other team couldn't stop laughing at me. The parents on the other team were constantly seeing me as some sort of threat, simply because of what I was wearing. There was talk of how it can be dangerous, or have something sharp inside, though it was skin tight. The more hair I lost, the more visible my bald spot began to show through my ponytail hole. so I bought a bunch of colored extensions to add more hair to my own. When I was old enough, my dermatologist and I started to try out some steroid creams and ointments to apply on the affected areas. It didn't necessarily work, as when the hair grew back, another spot appeared. Then I made the courageous decision to start steroid injections into my scalp. Basically, every month I would go in to get several injections into my head to stimulate hair growth on the bald spots. The more baldness you had, the more injections you got. There were many times when I passed out, puked, and was knocked out for the following days. I wore Emla freezing cream, but in my opinion, it didn't really do anything. I want to say it did help, but only to a certain extent, just not fully. By the age of 12, at the very end of my grade 6 year, I had lost over 85% of my hair. I was devastated. My self-esteem had gone to its lowest, and I hated the way I looked in the mirror, and honestly, I really didn't want to show my face at school or in public. I started to wear my beanie fully on my head, which made me look super weird in my personal opinion. One day on a weekend, my mom and sister took me to a local wig shop. I had tried on the most beautiful long brown wig and was excited to show it off the following Monday at school. But when I got there, I remember everyone being a tad confused. They were asking themselves, how could someone go from having little hair to so much? Which led them to come a little closer and look at the hairline. They could tell it was a wig. I was the most susceptible to others' thoughts and couldn't help myself but think about what my fellow schoolmates had been saying about me behind my back. Calling me wiggy, Barbie doll, bubblehead, everything you can think of. I had then unrealized how unnatural my wig looked. I should mention that it is very hard to find a wig that fits a small head without looking too big. Only 3% of my elementary school knew I was balding. It was really hard and I felt stuck. I didn't want to go to school or see my friends. After a mental breakdown one night talking to my parents, I came up with an idea. The day after, I had asked my teacher if I could do a PowerPoint presentation in front of my class informing them on what alopecia was and raising the concern on how these names I was being called made me feel. I worked on it with my best friend at the time, Elizabeth, during school, and in exchange we got some English marks. After a couple of days working on it, I finally got up in front of the class to speak. I kept shaking the entire time, but I knew deep down this is what I had to do. At the end of my presentation, I took off my wig, showed my classmates what my head really looked like. I've never felt more empowered than I did in that moment. It was such an emotional day. I gained the courage from openly speaking about it, and I finally understood that the only reason why people judged was because they didn't fully understand the story. In between grade 6 and 7, I shaved my head with the remainder of hair I had left. It was my first time being bald. I continued to try different treatments, but nothing was working. Beginning of grade 7, I was at a brand new school which had kids from grade 7 to 12. I had only come with a few friends, but other than that, I was with complete strangers. I remember on the first day of school, I had overheard some of the grade 8s talking about me in the bathroom, calling me names. Many other students were wondering if I had cancer. I really wanted to start off a new year with clear air. I didn't want to be called the same names anymore. I wanted to feel comfortable in my own skin in front of my classmates, as these were the people I was going to be sharing the next 4 years with. Second week in, I did what I had to do. I went into all 6 classes on the elementary side to inform them with what I had. I didn't want to hide anymore. I wasn't going to take being bullied for the rest of my life. After 6 presentations, there were many apologies, and I had gained a whole lot of new friends as well. As long as people understood it was something I couldn't control, they treated me like an equal, which really wasn't right. Everyone should be treated the same despite differences. I thought I was in the clear, as all the elementary kids knew about my disease, until the high school students became another issue. The elementary and secondary schedules were different, so I had thought I could avoid them altogether. But being in the same building, that simply wasn't possible. They laughed at me, called me names, and made me feel so little. I couldn't deal with it. I remember feeling so resilient in front of individuals my own age, but when it came to those 2 to 5 years older than me, I got really scared. I had talked to my principal about the bullying, and he introduced me to a grade 12 student that also suffered from alopecia. I was really happy to meet him and to know that I had at least one older kid on my side. I asked him if he could come up with me to speak in front of the whole school during an assembly, and he said yes. Assembly day came. I felt like I was going to throw up, and I had never felt more nervous in my life. Standing in front of 600 plus people was the most intimidating experience of my entire life. He stood behind me for support, and I just quickly spoke, explained what I had and how terrible it felt to be treated poorly for something I couldn't control. Boy, was that one of the biggest achievements of my life. I was starting to accept myself for who I was, but that didn't stop me from trying anything to gain my hair back. A year later, I started a harsh chemotherapeutic treatment called methotrexate. I would take folic acid every day of the week, and on Friday, a nurse would come to my house to inject the medication into my thighs. It had the absolute worst side effects. Most weekends I wasn't able to leave the house because of how sick I felt after my dosage. Nausea, heartburn, vomiting, headaches, joint pain, you name it, I had it. The only good thing that came out of it was the fact that it was producing hair growth. After a year and a half undergoing this treatment, I had to finally stop. There was too much at risk for long-term side effects. I knew deep down that if I stopped treatment, my hair would fall back out. But it was about time that I took control over my life again. I finally understood that something as terrible as that wasn't better than getting my hair back. My health was more important, so I stopped the medication and treatments altogether and gave my body a break. After that, I became really open about talking about my alopecia with others. I started my own YouTube channel in order to share my story and help others with alopecia. I don't have this YouTube channel anymore. I decided to completely delete it because I felt it was too cringy, but I really wish I kept it. I kept buying new wigs for the hope that they would look more realistic than the last. I had no luck in my hometown when it came to wigs. Most stores were very pushy and made me feel uncomfortable when trying them on. Every year at school, when the new grade 7s came in, I would go into all their classes to raise awareness for alopecia in order to prevent future commentaries or confusion. Because at that point in my life, I had fun switching up with my wigs on a day-to-day basis. I believe it was in grade 8 where I became open about my alopecia on social media. Very confident enough to post my very first bald picture in order to raise awareness so people wouldn't automatically think I had cancer. I wanted people to know that I remain the same person, just only without any hair. I wanted nothing more than to spread positivity and self-love with the world. At that point, I started going to an alopecia support group in my hometown where I got to meet a few individuals with alopecia. The same year, I was given this incredible opportunity to be an extra in the Paramount movie Downsizing, starring Matt Damon. They were in need of bald people, and I made the cut. It was the coolest experience to be in a room full of people who looked like me, let alone working on set with them. In grade 9 at my school's dance show, I decided to create a piece to perform in front of a large audience to raise awareness once again. It involved several mirrors, and the story behind it was that I was fighting with my own insecurities while looking in the mirror. When the music started to build, I ripped off my wig and found a sense of love for who I was. By the end of the dance, I felt beautiful and fearless as a bald woman. Every chance I got to share my story, I did. I felt like I had found my purpose in life, and that was to inspire, help people feel beautiful in their own skin, and help others in any way I could. I did a wonderful photo shoot with a talented photographer to show the beauty of being bald. The thing that probably impacted my life the most was being in musical theater from a young age. It provided me with the tools I needed to feel confident and embrace my uniqueness. Start of grade 10, I finally went to this wig store I had heard so much about in Toronto. I met the owner, Michael Suba, of Continental Hair during my first consultation. I remember him picking out my very first wig, and that was the one that I left with. It was the first place where I felt 100% comfortable trying on hair pieces. The minute I walked in, I felt nothing but welcoming arms from the staff. I left with the most beautiful, high quality, and realistic looking wig. Throughout the years, I've done a couple of advertising videos with this company all about wigs and alopecia. I am so fortunate to be a part of the Continental family. That same year, I tried a non-invasive treatment option called Rogaine to help promote hair growth. After many months, it was simply an enormous waste of money and didn't do anything for me. Following that, my dermatologist suggested I tried seeing a new dermatologist in town. where they offered a new treatment called DPCP. The minute I walked into her examining room, the doctor was nothing but cold and rude. She tried pulling out a piece of my hair without telling me first, to test the strength of my hair. She was aggressive, and I had no intention of going back. The treatment she offered sounded like hell anyway. In grade 11, after a full year of being treatment-free, I decided to try the steroid injections again. I was 80% bald at the time, which meant a whole lot more needles and pain to go with it. But I wanted to give it another try, simply because I'd matured, my body changed, and I was no longer afraid of needles. The results were amazing. My hair was actually starting to grow back for once. It was coming in real dark and thick too. Of course there were still bald spots that weren't growing hair, but I had enough to cover them all, even to put it into a pony. Summer of 2018, I went to my very first Canf, Canadian Alopecia Areata Foundation conference in Toronto. I met individuals from ages 1 to 80 who suffered from all forms of alopecia and hair loss. It was definitely a life-changing weekend that I got to share with my dad. I left feeling more inspired than ever. I continued my injections for about a year, but unfortunately after that, it had stopped working and my hair was starting to fall out once again, and it was falling out fast. I was okay with it. These were the cards I was dealt with, and I just had to accept it. Growing up, doctors were honest with me by saying that I may never have a full head of hair again, meaning I was prepared for this. One of the last treatments I tried before completely stopping was something called PRP. My friend Kat, who had also had alopecia at the time, was undergoing this treatment as well. Her mom, who was a dermatologist, was the person treating her. It was something very similar to the injections, but with this they had to draw your blood, put it through some sort of plasma stimulator, and inject your head with your own DNA. Unfortunately, we tried many times to get the needle in, but simply could not find a vein to cooperate. And it was at that point where I decided to completely stop treatment. Right before the day of my grade 12 graduation photos, my best friend Claire and I decided to shave my head again. I wanted to really make a statement with these photos, and so I walked into school completely bald. Went into the photo shoot with a creative idea to take pictures with one wig in both hands. After that, I felt completely comfortable going out in public without a wig or scarf. Of course, people still stared everywhere I went. Did I care? Nope. I was fearless and I wasn't going to let anyone bring me down. After my 18th birthday, all I wanted was to get an alopecia-themed tattoo. It basically explains my whole journey into one picture. I started to lose my eyebrows slowly at the same time, but I was able to cover them up with makeup. But after a few months, it became more and more difficult to fill them in. As part of my graduation gift, my parents paid for me to get my eyebrows microbladed by the incredible Amy. It was such a relieving feeling to have my brows back. By the end of November in 2019, all of them were gone, but thankfully, I still had my microblading. Middle of 2020, my alopecia areata started to look more and more like universalis, meaning complete baldness around the body. I had never grown hair on my legs or arms before, but it started to really affect my eyelashes, and my eyebrows were already gone. During quarantine of COVID-19, it gave me the opportunity to start learning how to apply false lashes properly, which I always felt nervous about doing. Another great thing that came out of COVID quarantine was starting my Alopecia Focus Instagram page. It blew up very quickly, and I felt so loved and happy to be supported by such amazing people in my life. Here we are in present tense, my first video on my new YouTube channel, to continue my path on raising awareness for alopecia and helping others throughout their journey of life. In conclusion, everything has shaped me and molded me into the person I am today. I know that I am beautiful, courageous, strong, and resilient. Hair or no hair, I am still Marcy Gallant, and that's never going to change. And this was my alopecia story. I am done. Boy, does my mouth hurt from talking so much. If you are still watching at this point, a huge shout out to you, huge thank you. You will never understand how much I appreciate it. And for those who have come and gone in my life, another thank you to you guys. Without your love and support, this wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have gone in front of a camera and spoke my mind about my story, so thank you. Stay tuned for the next video. I have a really exciting wig review coming up from Uni Wigs, so turn on your post notifications. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that fun stuff, and go check out the Art of Alopecia on Instagram. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys!